Hello, and welcome to Tea with Jess. I'm Jess Montgomery, and I'm the author of the Kinship Historical Mystery Series set in 1920s Appalachia. And as one of my characters, Nana, likes to say, life is hard, have tea. So today, my tea mug is actually a birthday gift from a friend of mine who's been on the show, Heather Weber slash Heather Blake, who writes delightful novels. She has a new one coming out soon. And this is a mug that features supernatural characters. So there's Dean and Sam and Castiel, and of course their famous car called Baby. So she knows that I love that show and got me this mug, and so of course I have to use the mug and share it with all of you. Just a few little announcements, and then we'll be chatting with Cindy Pauwels, who writes as CL Pauwels. I do have a giveaway going on my Facebook page, so check that out. I'm giving away an Arc of the Echoes to one lucky winner. Um, it's really easy. Just go to my Facebook page. I've pinned the giveaway to the top. Of course, you want a copy of The Echoes, which is coming out March 29th. And the same winner will also receive a copy of the stills. So um, go ahead and take a look at that contest and think about if you'd like to enter it for a chance to win those books. And in the meantime, the second book in the series is The Hollows, and it is as an ebook, $2.99, just through February. So those are all my advertisements. Now I want to tell you about Cindy. Cindy and I met through the Antioch Writers Workshop. Gosh, she'll maybe know exactly how long. I'm going to say 10 years ago, maybe give or take a year. She was a first book speaker for the workshop and had been a volunteer for the workshop, but she was a first book speaker for her nonfiction book, Historic Warren County. And then she became assistant director. I was the director, she was the assistant director. We were a dynamic duo working together, bringing together community writers. And we also became friends. So that's always delightful when colleagues become friends. And she introduced me to writer's tears, not the sobbing kind. I was already familiar with those, but the Irish whiskey. So Cindy writes as C.L. Powell's. She's written, as I said, a nonfiction book, but also short fiction, essays, and two thrillers that are currently out. One's called 40 and Out, and the other one's called Burned Bridges, and they feature a detective named Veronica Jadzinski, who goes by Jads. But her newest book comes out next month. I believe it releases March 15th as an ebook, and she'll tell us more about that. And it's called Unwelcome Ties. And it's a prequel to those two novels. It concerns a variety of other characters, but also introduces us to Jads. And as Cindy likes to say, she pulled a Star Wars. So we're going to find out more about that. And I'm bringing Cindy on right now. Hello and welcome.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
I have, oh, goodness, I left my voice somewhere else. I have to put a plug in before we go any further. I stole that Star Wars line from TJ Turner.
Okay. Another writer
So
that people should get to know, TJ Turner. You pulled a Star Wars, as TJ Turner says.
there you go.
That's great. I did not realize that. Yeah, that's awesome. I haven't chatted with him in a while. I need to. Tell us about your mug first. Read us your mug.
This was a gift as well. I'm going the wrong way. It says coffee is not my cup of tea, and yes, this is tea. I never learned to drink coffee, even in the darkest hours of midnight shift on the dispatch desk. I tried once, and it just wasn't going to do it. So
Right.
there's my caffeine for the day.
That's awesome. Yes, I remember we always made sure to have really good tea. You were like the tea consultant for representing the tea drinkers that came to Antioch Writers Workshop and made sure we had decent tea, or at least a hot water kettle. So if people brought their own tea, they could make their own decent tea.
For
So
years, I made fun of my mother for carrying her own tea bags, and guess what I do now? So I've turned
you
into
carry
a
your
tea
own.
snob and carry my own.
There are worse things you could be a snob about. I think that's pretty good. A tea snob. So tell us about Unwelcome Ties. Without spoilers, give us a summary of the book.
Well, Unwelcome Ties is the story of a young woman named Toni Horvat. Being set in the Toledo area, there's a lot of Hungarian and Polish ethnicity, two very strong ethnic communities, and that I'm connected to, and that my books are set in. She is, as the book opens, has just recently been orphaned for the second time in her life, which is kind of a twist, but it happens because her birth mother died at birth. Her adoptive parents have now died, and she feels she's alone. All she has is her fiance, who is really more interested in other things than in what she's dealing with. And one day in her efforts as at the federal court, she gets a letter from a convicted felon in Milan prison, who says, "I can help you find your family." And the I just lost the Sherlock Holmes line. The game's afoot. She's unfortunately is roped into a counterfeiting situation and used as an unwitting mule, and has to take things into her own hands, shall we say, and try to avoid getting arrested while she figures things out, and still doesn't lose that last chance at family. So
that's a good summary. I like that. Doesn't want to lose that last chance at family, but also doesn't want to, get into a ton of trouble. When does the book come out? March 15th is the ebook.
Well, you have a date that I haven't gotten yet. Last I heard,
it off of a retailer. So,
last I heard from my publishers at Crossroad Press was end of March. 15th may have been the new firm date. I've been a little preoccupied with some personal issues the last couple of weeks, and I've dropped the ball terribly on any promotional on this. So I appreciate you getting the word out. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, this will start the ball rolling with that. Well, I have your website, CL Pauwels.
I knew I should have updated that last week.
Well, now, as soon as we're done, update it, because I'm going to tell people go to CL Pauwels. And for our podcast listeners later this week, that's CLPAUWELS.com. I'll have that in the show notes as well. So hopefully people can go to your website or just check on online retailers or Crossroads Press, right? And find out how to get the book, or, folks, also, you can go to your local libraries and demand they have copies available. That's also a great thing to do to support writers and to get books that you want. So why did you pull a Star Wars, as TJ would say?
Well, this manuscript has been with me a long, long time. It is technically the first novel I ever completed in draft form. Way back in 2005, in my first NaNoWriMo effort. It's been through so many iterations that it's almost recognizable, but not quite. You would remember it from our time together when you were an advisor for me in grad school, because I rewrote it. I rewrote it at one time as my master's thesis. Finished that in 2010, and it languished because it really wasn't very good at that stage. But what did I know? 40 and Out was also from Nano in 2006, and that one I focused on a lot more. And then after Burned Bridges came out, I just kept thinking about Ties. I just really wanted to see if I couldn't somehow resurrect it. And I realized that there was a character, one of the local police officers that I had written into Ties, that Jazz would be perfect for in an earlier iteration. And because if anyone who's read either 40 and Out or Burned Bridges, Jazz and her now ex-husband Nate, I really I like them. They're my friends now. You know how we are. Our characters become our buddies. And I kind of wondered. I thought maybe people would like to know how she ended up where she was and why. And that's part of the story with Tony is Jad's background there. So I made it happen eventually, and it's now completes what I've called mentally for years my Toledo trilogy.
Your Toledo trilogy. I like that. That makes sense. And for folks who are listening who don't know what NaNoWriMo is, can you give us a brief description of what that is? Because I know that's been a big part of your writing journey.
Yeah, NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, every November. A young man by the name of Chris Beatties came up with this idea. I don't know when, but I stumbled on it in 2005 when I was searching for direction. We had just relocated to Southwest Ohio. I was determined I was going to finally focus on my writing. And I thought, wow, this would be a really cool way to do it. And in NaNoWriMo, for the 30 days of November, you commit to writing 50,000 words of a draft of a novel, which, if you break it down, is 1,667 words a day for 30 days. And it's an exercise, it's masochistic, but it's an exercise in turning off your inner editor, that horrible voice that tells you, oh, that's terrible. Why are you writing that? You can't say that. Turn that off and just get the words in the story down and worry about editing later. And it's as crazy as it sounds, it's really helpful for me getting started. I've done it several times over the years, finished or won, as Nano says, my 50,000 count 3 times. A couple times didn't make it just because of life and things, but it's also a nice community. It's grown massively from online to local writing groups. If you're looking for a writing group, it's a great way to get connected with people in your area. We have a couple of really strong Nano groups in the Dayton area. And we were traveling to visit my son in Chicago one year during Nano and walked into a coffee shop and there was a Nano group in the corner. And I was just so excited to stop and chat with them. And so it's an international thing anymore, and they support youth literacy efforts, and it's a really great organization.
Nice, that's great. Well, what has drawn you to the mystery thriller genre?
It took me a long time to figure that one out because, of course, I've been getting that question since 40 and Out came out, and I started pushing that. I think I realized that because in mysteries, I can make sure that at least in some way, some measure, justice is served. The bad guy gets his comeuppance to some extent, and things are righted, because so often in our world that just doesn't happen, and we're so out of control that putting these stories down and making sure that things are righted to some extent takes care of that a little bit, just a little bit.
Just a little bit, at least in our hearts and imaginations. That makes sense. Yeah, that's part of what draws me as well. The puzzle aspect plus the justice aspect plus, a crime that shakes up a family or a community kind of sheds light on bigger issues sometimes in the community. So all those are wonderful aspects of reading and writing mysteries and thrillers. So I mentioned at the top that you introduced me to Writer's Tears, the Irish.
I have a bottle in the kitchen.
Ooh, why aren't we recording this at your house? I drank all of my Writer's Tears. And it's a delightful whiskey, and we've shared it every now and then. But metaphorically speaking, sometimes we have Writer's Tears. You said Nano is a big part of your journey. And of course, I know you did your master's at Antioch University, and that was a part of your journey. You're big on the writing community, a big supporter in the writing community. So kind of what keeps you going? What keeps you avoiding writers' tears to them?
Well, unfortunately, it was Antioch Writers Workshop, and
Oh,
as we both know, that has gone by the wayside, unfortunately. And
mhm.
I've floundered quite a bit since then because that was
Oh,
my local writing community, my connections. Of course, it didn't help that COVID ended up at the end of not too far after that, and
that's right.
everything's upside down. But yeah, that was those were my people. I found my first real writers group from them in 2010, and this that's what I didn't say. This mug is a gift from Lori. Lori
Oh,
Feder Lopez, who was a dear friend and writing partner who left us far too soon, 3 years ago now. But yeah, the Writers Workshop was a tremendous opportunity for me in those years, and I wouldn't be here now with anything published if it weren't for them and for you.
oh,
All things said,
well,
you got me through a lot of bumps in the years, ma'am. So
well, happy to do so. And I think that's a big, it is kind of upside down now. I think we're all feeling that a bit because, yeah, the Antioch Writers Workshop was a big part of both our lives and a big part of many writers' lives, and created a lot of ongoing relationships. So
absolutely,
I like to think, that the events themselves, the organization itself, wrapped up at least in the iteration that we were involved in. Who knows? Maybe it'll come back in some other form under other people's guidance.
mm,
But the relationships that were created, many of them, not just
mm,
ours, but many other relationships, continue on.
yes,
And I think that's one of the joys of being part of any artist community or writing community is not, I mean, it's great to have a product, something you've created, but also those relationships. So I'd say that's one big tip for writers is to go out as best you can, you know, even if it's virtually in these hopefully winding down pandemic days, um, and finding writers groups like NaNoWriMo. Um, I do think the pandemic has helped us find creative ways to connect that
hmm
we might not have before. I don't really believe it was worth going through all that, but
yeah. Well, that's a whole thing.
you know,
Yeah.
finding a little bit of lemonade out of all those lemons. There are online writing groups such as NaNoWriMo and other groups that people could find. So I think we'd agree community is an important tip for writers. What other tips would you give writers?
And was absolutely connecting. And if you can't find a group, I mean, just a friendly voice and a committed writing partner. I mean, just someone, preferably someone probably you don't live with, unless you happen to have a writer in house. But yeah, someone who will be honest with you about your work, but will also be supportive when you tell them it's terrible. They'll talk you down that it's really not that bad, and we all need that voice. And unfortunately, non-writers don't understand the whole mindset that goes with how much we do think of our characters as our buddies, and those
Mhm.
voices in our head are not necessarily indications that we need the little white jacket, but we understand each other, and that can be as important and supportive as anything. I've been teaching creative writing at the college level now for almost 6 years, and I hear that so often from even my students. It's just, wow, you get what I'm talking about. You understand, and and just hearing other people that have are experiencing the same things with their words and their creativity, that it's so important. And that my last lesson is always connect. Here's some sources. So
That's wonderful. Now, if I understand correctly, um, where you teach, it's not location based. So theoretically, anybody could could
anybody,
could
I,
take your class. Tell us about your class and where you teach.
I teach online for Yavapai College out of Prescott, Arizona. Um, when I first started, it's been about 6 years ago. I'd have to double check. It was through the Antioch Writers Workshop. Lorraine
Mhm.
Herring was our fiction speaker for that, or not fiction, the beginnings. I think was
Mhm.
what Lorraine did. And she was the director of the program there. And before she left, we we spent so much time with our faculty. She knew I was an adjunct here teaching freshman composition at local colleges. And she asked if I might be interested in joining her faculty in Yavapai. And the rest is history. I've taught, designed and taught memoir and creative nonfiction. And we, at her suggestion, put together an 8-week workshop just called Writing Through COVID, just to get us through. And I was really pleased with how well that went and how it was received. And we've since revised it slightly just to Writing Through Chaos, because there's so much more than just COVID. And it's a very well received class, and I'm just thrilled that it seems to be helping people.
That's awesome.
And then,
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So, and this semester, I'm actually just finishing up, about 2/3 of the way through, a class on flash fiction and nonfiction, and that's been a lot of fun. So
great. Oh, so that's another way to make community and to learn about the writing process. That's great. That's wonderful. Are you working on a new piece of writing, or focusing on promoting Unwelcome Ties and your teaching duties for right now, or what's happening?
it's oddly enough, I have yet another long-standing novel that has been resurrected. This is it was my last big nano push back in, let's see, I'm looking at my notes. Yes, I'm cheating because I don't remember dates anymore.
Who does among us? I know.
Yeah, 2011. So more years ago than I care to count. It's been languishing. Again, it's been rewritten multiple times. But in the interim, since then, I have revised and published 40 and Out. I have written and published Burned Bridges. I have revised and are ready to. So I kind of give myself a little bit of grace in that respect. But this is
the process.
And this is a new character. This is the voice in my head. This character woke me up one morning going, hey, you need to tell my story. And it's nice. She's got a great voice. It's a very, very different from 40 and Out because it's first person. She's a very strong, independent person, but she's also realizes she doesn't maybe understand life quite as much as she thought she did. She's a hacker. It's in Dayton and Yellow Springs. I really like her, and I had hoped for a long time that this would be my golden ticket to the agent world. As luck would have it, through a Pitter Twitch contest, I connected with an agent, and after asking for 50 pages and then asking for a full, I got a quite lengthy and considered editorial letter and a request for revise and resubmit. So nice. I'm beyond thrilled. I balked at it at first because, hey, somebody wants to change my words, but yeah. That work is with my final beta readers right now, and assuming they don't have any major issues, I hope to get that off to her here in another week or two.
That's fantastic.
Then I need to think about something new. Then we'll see.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and don't worry. Another voice will pop up in your head and say, hey, tell my story. Well, thank you so much for being on Tea with Jess, taking this little tea break with me. And good luck with Unwelcome Ties. I hope it finds lots of readers, and that people not only read Unwelcome Ties, but take a look at your other work and learn more about you at clpauwels.com. And until we chat in person, I'm happy to see you online. And thank you to everybody who joined us live, and thank you to everybody who's watching later. And until next week, everybody take care and be good to one another.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
My pleasure.